How are you? My name is Rabbi Eric. Eric is my name. Rabbi is my title. Rabbi is a Hebrew PhD. I went to rabbi school for 5 years after University of Pennsylvania. And then the first year was in Jerusalem. And then they ordained me and set me loose upon the world to stalk the stained glass jungles and tame the lions of Judah. And now today, through the courtesy of Rich and Janet, I am yours. I have been asked to speak about who and what is a Jew and Judaism. Now, of course, my standard answer is that my wife's name is Judy, and therefore my religion is Judaism. That's a joke. You should all be chuckling. I can't see. Okay.
I think Lisa's drinking
We
wine.
need a machine.
All right, they get worse. By the way, if you have a question, just raise your hand at any time. And assuming that I can see you raising your hand, I will call upon you. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for submitting yourselves to the wit and wisdom of Wisnia for an hour tonight. And can you see the schedule? No, I'll just tell you. Okay, can you hold it up? Janet's gonna hold up the screen and show you what we're going to be doing the next 4 weeks. We're going to start today of who and what is a Jew. Next week, we'll deal with God. The week after that, we'll deal with Torah and Bible. The week after that, we'll deal with prayer. And the week after that, we'll deal with Israel. So today, we're going to start with names. The question is the word Jew. There is no such word. In Hebrew, the language of the Jews, there is no letter J. That sound does not exist. So we never called ourselves Jews. That's an English invention. It's an English invention based on Latin and Greek. And because the English called us Jews, we started calling ourselves Jews. But up until King James, we never did that. And technically, we don't use the word Jew, nor the word Judaism. We call ourselves, if you remember your Bible, Yisrael. Yisrael, which in English we write I-S-R-A-E-L, Israel, but technically it is Yisrael. So that one who is a member of the people or tribe of Yisrael was known in Hebrew as a member of the Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel. There were 12 tribes, as I'm sure you know, so that we were a clan. Could I have a glass of water?
Sure.
We were a clan, a Bedouin tribe. As the Bible will tell you, the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we were a family. Jacob went down into Egypt, and there we became great and powerful, a lot of us. Moses brought us out of Egypt, thank you, approximately in the year 1250 BCE. And we wandered in the desert for 40 years. And we made it into the land of Israel in approximately the year 1210 BCE. And those people, those tribes that moved into Israel at that point, into the land of Canaan, they spoke the language Hebrew, and they were a people. Now, in Hebrew, the word for people is am, A-H-M, am. So am, a member of an am. Get it? And that's what we called ourselves. We were Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. And we saw ourselves as a collective. We did not see ourselves as individuals. In fact, if you ask me the major difference between Judaism and Christianity, I will tell you that very simply, Jews see themselves as members of a collective a people. Christians view themselves as individual souls. Jews, by and large, do not. The idea that a Jew could have individual salvation while the rest of his family did not is impossible. In fact, we look upon salvation and our identity as communal. The basic unit of Judaism is the family, the household, not the individual. I'm not even sure we believe in the soul, let alone what that ever means, which we'll talk about as we go on. So Jews are a collective. We are an am. We came out of Israel and back to Israel from Egypt. And there in Israel, we formed ourselves into the people. Now, because at one point, the country of Israel split in half around the year 930 BCE. If you remember your Bible, the first king of Israel, his name was Saul, around 1210. Saul was followed by David, who took over around, Saul, for 200 years, from 1210 till about 1010, we had the tribes and judges, and it was pandemonium. For 200 years, the first 200 years of our national existence, things were not going well. We had absolute pandemonium under the judges. The Bible likes to say everybody did what was right in his own eyes, which means nobody did what was right. And we decided we needed a king. So the tribal leaders in the year 1010 elected Saul. Now, Saul was from the littlest tribe, the weakest one, and had absolutely no power. So it's rather obvious that we elected a king who would not be able to do anything. That's probably why he got elected. All Saul managed to do was to run around, tell the 12 tribes, well, you really should be nice to one another, you know. And everybody said, don't listen to him. And so the Philistines ganged up and went after Saul. And instead of helping him, we just all watched Saul get killed. And we said, okay, we don't want a king. We like pandemonium. Well, not everybody liked pandemonium. So the next guy who wanted to be elected king, David, was very powerful and very strong. And he said, I am going to take you 12 tribes and make you a nation, whether you like it or not. And he did. Very powerful man. He defeated the Philistines. He conquered the land of Canaan. And David was king from about 1000 down to the year 970. His son Solomon was elected king in not a very fair election. but he was David's son, and David was powerful. So we had our third king, and his name was Solomon. Solomon was also very powerful, and he ran everything until about the year 930. And at that point, the Jewish world fell apart. Everybody wanted to do what was right in his own eyes. Nobody wanted to follow a king. So the country of Israel, the the one Jewish people, divided in half and elected two different competing kings. The northern kingdom called itself the kingdom of Yisrael, because remember, we were the tribes of Israel. The southern kingdom called itself the kingdom of Judah, but since there's no J in Hebrew, they called themselves by the name of the tribe Yehudah. Yehudah. Very quickly, history conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, wiped it out. We have the story of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Not so true, but we like to tell the story. The southern kingdom of Yehudah was the one that was left. All the Jews today are descendants from the people who lived in the kingdom of Judah, but there's no J in Hebrew, so it was really Yehudah. And the religion became known as the religion of Yehudah. That's, or Yahadut. So that my religion is not Judaism, it is Judaism. In Hebrew, Yehudi, Yisrael. In English, Israelite, Jew, or perhaps the old Hebrew word for Bedouin, which was Ivri, or Hebrew. Hebrew simply means Bedouin. So, okay. All this is just an introduction of terminology. We are the people of Yisrael. We are members of the children of Israel, and we are an a people of Israel, Yisrael. Now the question is, who's a member? Who's in? Who's not in? Is it enough just to say, I eat bagels and lox, I feel Jewish? No. There's a little more to it than that. You can speak Hebrew and live in Israel and still not be a Jew. You can be a Christian, you can be an atheist, you can be a Muslim, you can be anything you want to be. So what is it that makes you Jewish? Certainly not speaking Hebrew, because most Jews today don't speak Hebrew. And in Israel, everybody, even those who are not Jews, speak Hebrew. So although the Hebrew language is important as part of our national identity, it's not necessary nor sufficient. How do we determine who is a Jew? Well, the traditional rabbinic position was that if you were born of a Jewish mother, that made you a Jew. That's a pretty poor definition, because then you're left with the question, well, who's a Jewish mother? How do I determine who she is? Well, she was born of a Jewish mother. We call this a tautology. This is not a definition. And we've had several problems with this issue of identity. Number one, it ignores the father. Number two, what happens if you're born of a Jewish mother and then you convert to another religion? Are you still a Jew? This became a real problem in the year 1960, which unfortunately is a few years ago. In 1960, there was a man from Poland. His name was Oswald Rufeisen. Oswald was born of a Jewish mother, raised as a Jew. He had a Jewish father, learned Hebrew, could pray like a Jew, had a bar mitzvah as a Jew. Now the problem is World War II comes along. Jews were being rounded up and gassed. So Oswald's parents had him hide in a monastery in Poland. And the monks were very kind. They took him in, treated him like one of their own, and hid him under risk of death. They protected Oswald from the Nazis. At the end of the war, Oswald had no Jewish world to go back to. Every Jew in Poland was dead. Jewish life in Poland had ceased. So Oswald stayed in the monastery, officially converted, became a Catholic, and started living his life as Brother Daniel. In the year 1960, Brother Daniel decided, I'd like to move to the Holy Land to live and work in our monastery in the city of Haifa in Israel. The monastery was very happy. They wanted volunteers to go work in Israel. So Brother Daniel took the plane to Israel from Warsaw, got off the plane, and he said, I'm here, I'm home. And the Israelis said, that's very nice. Would you like to claim citizenship? And Oswald said, well, of course I am, I'm a Jew. They said to him, well, we have a test question. Was your mother Jewish? And Oswald said, of course my mother was Jewish. My father was Jewish. Every relative I had was Jewish. I went to Hebrew school. Want to hear me say the Shema? Good. Do you have a job waiting for you here in Israel? And he said, of course I do. I'm going to be working at a monastery in Haifa. And they said, a monastery in Haifa? Well, what's your religion? And he said, oh, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic and I'm a monk. In fact, you might want to put next to my name Oswald Rufeisen, AKA Brother Daniel. I mean, the man was a priest. He wasn't going to lie. And they said to him in the government of Israel, no. You can't be a Jew and a Catholic priest. And he said, why not? Your definition was born of a Jewish mother. I was born of a Jewish mother. Why isn't that enough? The government of Israel said, you can't be a Catholic priest and a Jew. And he said, I beg to differ. Let me go ask the chief Orthodox rabbi of Israel. And Brother Daniel went to the chief Orthodox rabbi of Israel. And the chief Orthodox rabbi of Israel said, you have a very interesting case. Our definition is born of a Jewish mother, you're a Jew. So, Brother Daniel, you're not a good Jew, you're a terrible Jew, but you're still a Jew. And he said, thank you. I want to come live in Israel as a Jew, but my religion will be Catholicism. It went to the Supreme Court in Israel. And in 1960, the Supreme Court of Israel ruled against the chief Orthodox rabbi of Israel and said, no, if you convert and become a Catholic, you're no longer a Jew. What that did was in 1960, pretty much destroy the definition of who is a Jew. So we Jews have been scrambling since that time to try and figure out just who is a Jew. So I have three aspects that I will discuss with you. One, the traditional view I just talked about, born of a Jewish mother. Since 1960, not even the country of Israel uses that definition. But what we do have are three aspects that I use as a rabbi. The first is parentage. Just like the traditional definition was born of a Jewish mother, I will look at first lineage, because that's important. We are a people, we are a family. So lineage is important. Now, under number one, my lineage requirement, I have, number one is lineage, and under lineage, I have three possible answers. Can you hold it up so they can see it or no? It says Wisnia. Oh, that's still yours. Number one, to have the requirement of lineage, I count one Jewish parent, either mother or father.
Janet, move it further over. We can't see it. Keep going. Oh, ooh.
The lights, you got to turn the lights off.
We do that out.
We're going to try and make the lights lower.
Is that right?
Yeah, make the lights lower.
Oh, yes, we can. Can we do this? No.
No. Okay. Number one was lineage. And, and under lineage, I have three things that will answer that. Number one, under lineage, you can be born of a Jewish mother or a Jewish father. The second thing that counts as lineage is being adopted by a Jewish mother or father. In other words, it's not an issue of blood. It's an issue of family. So that you either have a Jewish mother or a Jewish father, or you are adopted by a Jewish mother and father, and that is counted as full Jew. In other words, we count adoption as equivalent to being born. So that when you are adopted by a Jew, they're your parent. And the third aspect of lineage is conversion. And the reason we count conversion under lineage is because the way you become a Jew is you are adopted. There's a special ceremony. You study, you learn, and then you are adopted by Abraham and Sarah, the matriarch and patriarch in the Torah, in the Bible. So that when you convert to Judaism, you have been adopted by Abraham and Sarah. Number one, lineage, okay? Born of either parent, adopted by either parent, or convert. Number two, aspect number two of who is a Jew, self-identity. Brother Daniel said, I'm a Catholic. You can't be a Catholic and a Jew. I'm sorry, Brother Dan. He can think whatever he wants, and he can say whatever he wants. But if you want my opinion, and you want the state of Israel's opinion, no, if you convert to another religion, you're not a Jew. You can be a wonderfully nice person, but you're not a Jew. To be a Jew, you have to say, yes, I am a Jew. Now that's rather strange. You wouldn't think it's that important, but self-identity means you want to be a member of the Jewish people. In and of itself, that isn't very much, because you need, number one, lineage, number two, self-identity, And then you need number 3, which I like to define as you have to do the Jew. It's not enough to say you're a Jew. You got to do something Jewish. You know, some people say they believe in God, and then they break every one of God's commandments. I don't think they really believe in God. If you said, Eric, I love you, and then stuck a knife in my back, I wouldn't feel the love. And I'd say to you, assuming I recovered, I don't think you understand the word love, because what you just did is not how I define love. And if you think that's love, I don't want your love. So it's not just what you say, it's what you do. On the other hand, if you had a dark chocolate candy bar, which is a very sacred thing, and I said, could I have a piece of that dark chocolate candy bar? And you said, well, don't think I like you, Eric, because you're ugly. But if I eat that, you're going to sit there and just look sad. And I don't want to watch you look sad. So here, have a piece and go leave me alone. I would say, thank you. That's very nice. You're a weird person. But you know what? You gave me the chocolate. Thank you. You stick a knife in my back. I don't feel love. So, you remember that song from Camelot? Don't speak of love, da 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 da. If you're in love, show me. That's the point. Or is that from Carousel? I'm an old man, I don't remember. Look it up, let me know. The point is,
That's from My Fair Lady, I think.
thank you. Thank you very much. Who knew that? Sherry, good for you, Sherry. Thank you. I will quote you next time if I was corrected. I sit corrected. So that's the fact. I'll look at what you do. If you tell me Jesus is your personal savior and that you're going to sit at his right hand when you die and go to heaven, I will say, Mazel Tov, but you're not a Jew. Jews don't believe Jesus is up in heaven with God. We don't even believe in heaven, but that's a whole other discussion, and we have many weeks to talk about it. Jews have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different beliefs. But by and large, Jews believe that we are a people, a community, and that we have an obligation to act a certain way. Our religion was a formalization of that acting. It is the idea that you have to be good. In fact, when people ask me a lot, they say, well, Rabbi, how do you define God? I tell them, forget about it. Just add an O in the middle. I have to say add an O in the middle because some 8th grader would say Goddo, and I would say, no, genius, in the middle. Good. In other words, to be a Jew, you are a member of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, who believes that human beings have a responsibility to do good. Now we can spend a lot of time defining how you do good, what that means. By and large, the Jews have defined it by 613 commandments. That's what we believe are in the Bible. 613 of God's commandments telling us how to be good. So, does that mean Jews are the only people who do good? No. I hope all of you, even if you're not Jews, want to do good. This is good. It's good to do good. That's what we think all people should do. But do you have to do it our way? No. There are some of you misguided people who don't like butter pecan ice cream. Now, personally, I think this is a moral failing on your part, but I try not to tell you this often, and I try not to run around and bop you on the head and say, you have to eat butter pecan ice cream, because you may not like butter pecan ice cream. I don't understand that, but I understand people don't like it. I've heard this. They've sworn to me they don't like it. They like things like mint chocolate chip or orange pineapple, which are horrible, luscious flavors. But if it makes you happy, do I really care what flavor ice cream you eat? No. And in fact, if you don't eat butter pecan, it means there's more for me. So I will allow you, since I am God of the universe, I will allow you to eat whatever flavor ice cream you want to eat, as long as you allow me to eat whatever flavor ice cream I want to eat. If you are a Christian who likes to celebrate your Sabbath on Sunday, what do you want me to say? My people do it on Saturday. Okay. Is Saturday better than Sunday? No. So if you want to do it on Sunday, do it on Sunday. If you're a Muslim and you want to do it on Friday, Mazel Tov, do it on Friday. Is mine better than yours? No, it's different. I have certain family ways. You have certain family ways. Your family is just as good as my family. I think of it like speaking a language. I speak English. English is the best language there is. You know why? I can prove it very easily. Because that's what I speak. That's the end of the issue. English is better. Italian is a ridiculous language. Other than ordering dinner, they have fantastic food. I don't know why anybody would speak Italian. I can't speak it. Now, I've been told that this is very short-sighted on my part, and that over in Italy, they converse quite well in Italian. All right. I am not going to run over there and tell them they have to speak English, because I don't want them to run over here and tell me I have to speak Italian. They can have their way. I can have my way. Yes, I do like my way better. But you know what? I've had some of their food. A little eggplant rollatini. Nice stuff. Right? Spaghetti puttanesca. Oh, I'm in heaven. So you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be so dogmatic about Italian. But it's not mine, and I don't have to convince them to do it my way. Maybe I should learn a little tolerance and learn how they do it and speak a few more words of Italian. Jews are not convinced that they have the only way to God. Jews are convinced that we are a people who should do good. And that's our identity. How much time have I used up? 20 minutes. Very good. I can talk forever, but I'd like to ask at this point if you have any questions about anything in the entire world, because I know all the answers.
When you say Judaism or your religion of being Jewish, and when that gentleman went over there and he wanted to live in Israel, and they asked him, can you be a nation or like I can be an American and a Catholic? Can you
Right.
be there? And do you consider it separate and two things? Can you be of the nation and of
It's a
the
very good
religion?
question. And you've really put your finger on a problem that we have as Jews, but that we have not dealt with. In the ancient world of Israel, in the Bible, you could be a Jew, a Yehudi, and I'm Yisrael. You could be a Babylonian. You could be an Egyptian. And if you were an Egyptian, you spoke Egyptian, you lived like an Egyptian, and you worshiped like an Egyptian. And if you were a member of the Jewish people, that was the same thing, but only Jewish. Now then, the world has changed. Now we have modern secular states. So yes, the secular state of Israel, you do not have to be Jewish. And in fact, Brother Daniel became an Israeli citizen as a Catholic. There are many citizens of Israel who are atheists, who are Protestants, who are Catholics, who are Muslims. And that's not a problem. The problem is that the Jewish people, as a people, have a religion and holidays. And all of those are also the holidays and religion of the state of Israel. So it's rather strange that Israel has a new year on Rosh Hashanah and on New Year's Day. And you might say, well, I'm a Muslim. Why am I celebrating the Jewish New Year? And they would tell you, well, you don't have to celebrate it at all. We're not going to force you to do anything, but we're closing the government and we're saying it's a new year. So it's not like America.
It is like America.
Well, it is perhaps.
Christmas is.
Well, that's true. As the UUs, I guess you guys have been forced to observe more of American rituals than you ever wanted to.
We love to party.
I have a question.
Yes.
So of course, Judaism is a religion, but would you consider it sort of a culture as well?
Well,
Or is that
right.
not
The
right?
word religion, I'm sorry, were you finished with your question?
Yep.
That's an excellent question, because in the Torah, in the Bible, in biblical Hebrew, you can't say the word religion. There is no word religion. You can be a Jew, you can be an Egyptian, but you can't be in the Egyptian religion. We Jews lived in Egypt for 400 years as slaves. We weren't Egyptian because we kept our own culture. And I think that's exactly what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Is that Judaism, the word religion is not encompassing enough. Remember, I told you that religion is familial and communal. It is possible in the United States for you to have a religion and your children to have a different religion. It's not possible in Judaism. It's the same thing. Your identity and your religiosity in Judaism are the same thing. That's created a lot of problems for American Jews who want to live in the modern world and who say to me, I don't see my religion that way. And again, I have no power. Rabbis are not priests. Rabbis are simply PhDs. So I don't have any power over anybody. All I can do is teach and suggest. And you have every right to ignore me and find a rabbi who will disagree, which I'm sure you can. But Judaism generally says religion is familial, not personal. So therefore, all of our holidays are celebrated. Yes, we go to a synagogue, but also in your house. For Passover, the synagogue is closed. You celebrate Passover in your house with your family, and you tell the story, and you say what we say in Deuteronomy chapter 26. Arameo Vedavi. My father was a wandering Aramean Babylonian who went down into Egypt, and Pharaoh was nasty and made us slaves. My people know what it's like to be a slave. Slavery is terrible. Therefore, we prayed, God brought us out through the hand of Moses, thank God. And therefore we are celebrating in this land flowing with milk and honey. I'm not sure Moses meant Pennsylvania, but it counts. So, yes, it's a big problem because we mix identity with nation and with Am. That's why I say the best phrase to define Judaism is an Am, a people. Look, for an example, my daughter married this very nice little boy. I should stop calling him a little boy, he's 47. She married this very nice boy who fortunately likes me. I was his rabbi growing up, and he takes good care of me. What is he to me? He's this guy who lives with my daughter and takes good care of her, so I'm nice to him. But you know what I realized? He's more than that. He's my son. Yeah, my son-in-law. He's my son. He's part of my family. In other words, my family is my identity. And you can marry in. You don't have to formally convert. Guilt by association. So, any other questions about anything in the world?
Well, I wondered something else. It distresses me greatly that Jews even today are still persecuted. And I really don't have any idea why. I don't really understand why. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, yes. The Jews have always, since the earliest days, we have been the free spirits of the desert. My ancestors, we were sexist as hell, so forgive me if I speak in sexist language, because that's the language of the Bible. We were the wild boys of the desert. We didn't listen to nobody. The only leadership we had were the elders of the tribes, and we didn't listen to them too much either. And nobody elected them. They were just the old guys, so they'd make you feel guilty. But nobody had to do what they said. So when we went down to Egypt, the first thing we said was, what do you mean Pharaoh's a god? Nah, God's the only God. You can't make a statue of him. He's invisible. And if you can't see him, we ain't gonna look at Pharaoh and bow down. Right away, the Egyptians said, these people are gonna be trouble. Every nation of the world, we have looked at their monarchs and their dictators and their kings and said, you know, we Jews worship God and we don't do that too well. You think we're going to worship some human being? We don't listen to human beings. We'll talk to you. We'll discuss with you. We'll learn from you. You got something good to teach us? Very nice. You tell me to drive 35 miles in a 35-mile zone? Okay. But don't think that you did to determine what's right and wrong. I'll try and figure out what God wants me to do, which is what good is. And if you and I don't agree, I'll say so loudly, so that every monarch and every king and every nation of the world has usually had problems with Jews, because we don't worship kings and we don't bow down to monarchs or power. We worship good. We worship God, and that's the only thing. So therefore, we have always been on the outside of most power structures, i.e. the Romans or the monarchs of Europe who have found it very easy to say these Jews, they're not like us. You can't trust them. That's what Pharaoh said to the Jews in Egypt. He said to the people, he said, you know, these Jews, they don't dress like us, they don't talk like us, they talk funny, they look different. You can't trust foreigners. So he did, the first person to do it, I call it the Rule of Pharaoh. The Rule of Pharaoh was do unto others before they do unto you. Since you can't trust them, get them first. And that's what Pharaoh did. That's why we have Passover, to remember this, so that Jews don't fall into that power structure. And that we continue to say, power structures are there to be defied. Stand up for good and God, not what anybody else says. So yes,
All that sounds very American though, too.
well, why do you think, let's figure out who founded this country? They were a bunch of British deists who were very philo-Semitic. Originally, they were even thinking of making Hebrew the language of the United States, which I regret because that would have been very good, you know, and then I could, instead of this English business, be talking about Hebrew. But they were all very philo-Semitic, so that much of America is based on biblical Jewish concepts. Yes.
Yeah.
Tremendous. That's why Jews find America so wonderful. Because in America, it's the only country in the world. You can believe pretty much whatever you want. Just be good and don't bother people. Our kind of country. So what do I do with anti-Semitism? Anybody who is anti-Semitic, my feeling is you're an idiot. Although I will say that as a rabbi in a synagogue for 42 years, I've often said to anti-Semites, you hate Jews for all the wrong reasons. You know, you don't like our antinomianism and our anti-powers. Believe me, in a synagogue full of Jews, I'll tell you why you should hate Jews. I was living with them for 42 years.
You said something in the chat, but I don't think we can read it.
Anything?
Lisa, did you want to say something?
Anybody have anything else they'd like to say?
Well, I wanted to ask you real quick because when you mentioned you have 100, what was it, 161 rules you live by?
613.
Oh, sorry, maybe that's still too much for me.
No, that's the amount of seeds in a pomegranate.
Right.
Oh,
But
wow.
you see, the way Jews look at the world is Noah was the first, was the father of all human beings. All human beings are descended from Noah. This is our story. We don't believe this literally. We just tell the story because all human beings are brothers and sisters. God gives Noah basically 7 rules of morality and says, this is what I want all human beings to do. So all you non-Jews, to get an A with God, you have to be moral and good, okay? Jews have a much harder road. God gave us 613 commandments. We have to observe Rosh Hashanah. You don't have to do Rosh Hashanah. We got to do Pesach. You don't have to do Pesach. We don't get any better A from God. We get the same for schlugging A that you get for being good. And we have to observe all these rituals and all these people commandments, which you don't have to do. So it's a pain in the neck to be a Jew. And you don't get anything better out of it.
You don't even go to heaven because you don't believe in heaven.
Right. You know, one thing you'll learn in coming weeks is that we Jews take religion seriously. We don't take it literally, particularly the Bible. I'll repeat that because it's so brilliant. We take it seriously, but we don't take it literally. In other words, Heaven is a term that can be defined many ways. I love when I go down the road and I see the billboards which say, "Where will you be 5 minutes after you're dead?" And I want to stop and write, "How do you know? Because tell me, I want to know." And they'll tell me, of course, that I'll be in hell. And I say, "Really? Define hell and tell me." Hell is having to have a discussion with you. But I'll do that because I want to understand. There's no heaven and hell. You invented it. You made it up. How do you know where I'll be 5 minutes after I'm dead? Does anybody dead ever come back and talk to you? Let me tell you, I've done a lot of funerals in my 45 years in the rabbinate. Not one person came back to talk to me. And my grandma promised she would. Grandma promised if she could, she'd come back. I've been waiting since 1965. I have not heard from Grandma. My poor son Dov died in 2012, and he said, "Oh, I'm coming back to haunt you." He said, "You'll know." And I keep waiting. I keep waiting, not a thing. So I want to know how they know what happens after you die. As a rabbi and as a Jew, I say, we take these terms metaphorically. Heaven is here on earth. Hell is here on earth. My father lived in Auschwitz for 2.5 years. That was hell. People who are starving to death and dying of horrible diseases. That's hell. Heaven, butter pecan ice cream. Any other questions?
I do have a question, but we've run out of time, so I think we'll save it for next time. But I really want to thank you for doing this. This has just been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My honor and pleasure. I will see you next week. And next week, we're going to talk about the big G, God, because I work for her and I know her intimately.
Sounds